So the function of transducer is to convert one type of energy into another type of energy. For example, retina converts the basically not the retina, the rods and cones which is present into the neural layer of the retina, not into the pigmented layer, because retina has two type of layers. It has the pigmented layer and the neural layer. These are the two most important layers of the retina, although retina has 10 different type of layers in which rod and cones are present, but basically the rod and cones are not present in the pigmented layer, they are present into the neural layer. So the light is not reflected or refracted by the retina, it is basically absorbed by the rod and cones, and they act like a transducer. They convert the electromagnetic energy into electrochemical energy of action potential, and this action potential is now conveyed to the central nervous system, which accept it as a picture or image. So here I'm going to draw the structure of eye again, including the retinal layer also. This is basically the sclera. Here is the cornea, and now by simplifying this you can make it as, now this is the outermost layer, this is the outermost layer, which is known as the sclera. Outermost layer, sclera, and in front, which is exposed part, is known as cornea. Now the middle layer, this is called the choroid, up to here, just like this, up to here. Now it becomes thick. Here also it becomes thick, and this thickened part, is known as choroid, ciliary body. This is choroid. Now from ciliary body a structure arises which is known as iris. This is a diaphragm like structure. It is basically, you can say that the colored curtain like substance, a colored curtain like substance. A colored curtain like substance which arises from the ciliary body and have a aperture or space. This is known as, this space is known as pupil. Now iris has two type of muscles. One is known as constrictor, pupilla. Second one is dilator pupilla. A constrictor pupilla and the dilator pupilla. Now the constrictor pupilla contains circular muscles, and the dilator pupilla contain radial muscles. Now if the circular muscles contract, it will result into the meiosis or constriction of pupil. When the radial muscle contracts, it will result into mydriasis or dilation of pupil. I will discuss this part, the constriction and dilation of pupil and its relation to the central nervous system and the effect of different drugs on the dilation and constriction of pupil of eye into another lecture. Now come to the point. Now the most interesting layer and the most delicate structure of the eye, for which there is a high tough protection into the outermost layer. Then there is the highly nutrition in the middle layer, and the middle layer is highly vascular layer. It is full of vessels, it is full of arteries, it is full of blood vessels, full of capillary nerve plexus, which provides nutrition to the inner delicate structure, which is directly related to the central nervous system. And this layer, my heart favorite layer, you can say that. I love this layer. I love the function of this layer because the whole function of eye is due to this layer, and this layer is known as retina. This is called the retina. This is called the innermost layer. This is called the tunica. The tunica nervosa. Please concentrate on this word. Tunica nervosa. Nervosa means it contains the neural layer. It is connected to the nervous system. Now, I told you basically the retina contains two type of layers. Basically the retina contains two important type of layers. A pigmented layer. A pigmented layer here. Here is the pigmented layer. I have made a lot of pigments, red pigment, blue pigment. The pigmented layer is directly connected to the choroid. So choroid basically nourishes the pigments. It is attached to the pigmented layer of the retina, and the retina has other layer. It is known as neural layer. It is known as neural layer. So neural layer is also present on retina, but the most interesting thing here is what? That this pigmented layer further goes up to ciliary body, goes behind the iris, goes to ciliary body and on the iris, but the neural layer stop here. The exact location of the neural layer, the stoppage of the neural layer is between the sclerocorneal junction, this one, and the equator. This is the equator of eye. This is the sclerocorneal junction, and in between this distance, anywhere in between this distance, this neural layer stops, but the pigmented layer comes on the ciliary body and behind the iris. Now here is also important structure. I'm going to tell you. This is the lens, the most important structure also, and it is not as most important as retina. because the major function of the eye is through retina. So here is a lens, the most elastic part of the eye. Lens, the most elastic part of the eye. Lens has the following properties and characteristics. Let me to tell you what type of characteristics a lens have. It has a elongated fibers. It is made up of fibers. Lens is basically, the first characteristic of lens is it is transparent. The second characteristic of lens that it is crystalline. It is crystal shape. The third characteristic of lens is it is biconvex. It is biconvex. You can see the shape of lens. It is biconvex. It is basically behind the iris and beneath the ciliary body here. Behind the iris and pupil and beneath the ciliary body. It is biconvex. And the last one, which is I think the most important characteristic, the most important and most interesting characteristic, that it is also the most important part of the eye. It is playing the most important function of the eye, but it is avascular. If it is avascular, it is avascular just like cornea. Cornea, a corneal layer, the transparent layer, the exposed layer, also avascular. But cornea in some condition become vascularized, but lens is almost avascular. And one interesting information also, that the cornea and conjunctiva is also transparent. And when we see the color of different people and different animals, they are different. We think that this is the color of cornea, so it is wrong. If the eye is blue, it is just because the iris is blue, because it is, I told you, it is colored curtain like substance. So when it is colored curtain like substance, the iris is blue, the eye will become blue. The iris is grey, the eye will become grey. The iris is black, the eye will look like a black. So it is just the fault of iris that different people looks beautiful. It is not the fault of cornea. So these are the 4 basic characteristics of a lens. Now furthermore, if I tell you about the lens, then it is the focal length of a lens is 44. The focal length is 44 millimeter, and the refractory power of lens, is 23. Now furthermore, if you go further in detail of lens, if you ask me that go further in detail of lens, then I will go further in detail. Let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you further about the lens, because it is also an interesting part of the eye. It is basically made up of 3 structures. Capsule. The second one is anterior epithelium. The third one is a lens substance. Now capsule is an elastic membrane which is present on the lens, which covers basically the lens. Now anterior epithelium is beneath the capsule, and it is in the form of cuboidal epithelial cells. They are elongated at the margins. They are cuboidal epithelial cells, anterior epithelium, the cuboidal epithelial cells, and they are elongated at the margins. And the last thing is the lens substance. These are the lens fibers. These are the lens fibers, and these lens fibers are prismatic. First, these are prismatic, and secondly, these are in concentric layers. Concentric layers. So the light which is entering into the eye from here, the light which is entering into the eye from here is pass through the lens. Now it will change the path of the lens. It can change the path of the lens. It can be elongated. It can be more globular shape with the action of zonules, with the action of zonular fibers, and with the contraction or relaxation of ciliary body. This all process I will discuss in another lecture, because it is very difficult to tell you everything on a single page. And I will when I will tell you about the meiosis and mydriasis, the physiology of meiosis, mydriasis, and the relationship of eye to the central nervous system, I will tell you everything about how what happens when a ciliary muscle contract and the zonules relaxes, what happens to lens when a zonule contracts and ciliary muscle relaxes, and what happens when the lens become more globular and lens become more elongated. So this is another topic of interest. Now I will tell you one thing, that here is optic nerve present. Optic nerve present, through which the signals are directed to the central nervous system, and this part in the center is known as optic disc. Optic disc. Medial, basically the lateral to posterior pole. A lateral to posterior pole is the optic nerve. Now, a lens is not placed here as it is. Some fibers are connected to this lens, which support this lens. These fibers are basically attached to the ciliary body up here and to the lens up here, just like this. They are attached to the lens one side and attached to the ciliary body on the other side. They are called zonules or zonular fibers. They are called zonules or zonular fiber, or in simple language and in very simple language, they are called suspensory ligaments. They are called suspensory ligaments. They support the lens and they place the lens at its position. Now, there is an important thing, very important structure called as ora serrata. Ora what is this? Ora serrata. Ora serrata, when the retina goes here and it basically stops here. It stops here and a structure is made up here behind the lens here. This is basically, these are the finger-like projections, and this structure is known as ora serrata. This structure behind the lens is known as ora serrata, where the retina, the pigment, where the neural layer basically stops, is known as ora serrata. Now this portion, this part up to this is filled with the fluid. It is filled with the fluid. This portion is known as this one. This is known as vitreous body. Vitreous body. It is known as vitreous body. It is known as vitreous body. And this portion, this all portion in from forward to the lens is known as, it also contains a fluid. It contains a gel-like substance which is known as vitreous humor. And this portion contain also a fluid which is known as aqueous humor. This is known as aqueous humor. This maintains the pressure of eye. This maintains the basically the shape of the eye by applying the pressure. Now when it will apply more pressure on the eye, it will block here optic disc and a disease occur, which I will discuss in the portion of diseases of the eye. Now this is called the aqueous humor. Here aqueous humor present, here vitreous humor present, and there is a confusion in differentiating the anterior chamber and posterior chamber. So you have to know that the part which is between the cornea and the iris is anterior chamber. Cornea and iris is anterior chamber. The part which is between the iris and cornea is anterior chamber, and the part which is present between iris and lens is called posterior chamber. Now here it is also interesting to know about the drainage of eye, but it is very complicated to tell you here. I will make another lecture of drainage of eye separately. So this was the first lecture of eye. About I told you about the basic structure and functions of different layers of the eye, and I draw the structure of the eye, and I told you the different things. I'm gonna repeat everything, so if you didn't hear anything, so please hear this clearly. So this is the outermost layer. Outermost layer consists of sclera and cornea. The middle layer, which is also known as the uveal tract, it consists of choroid, ciliary body, suspensory ligaments, choroid, ciliary body, and the iris. Now the innermost layer, which is also called as the retinal layer or the tunica nervosa, which is directly linked to the central nervous system. The retina, it consists of the two layers, a pigmented layer, a neural layer. Neural layer basically faces into the orbital axis, or you can say that toward the center of the eye. Now the suspensory ligaments attach to the ciliary body, which further attach to the lens and support the lens. Now keep the lens at its place when the light enter. Now I will tell you the path how a light enter. A light enter through the cornea to the anterior chamber, through the pupil to posterior chamber, from posterior through lens to the pigment. It will be absorbed to pigmented layer of the retina, through the choroid, through the sclera. Here is also a present as part which is known as the lamina cribrosa. Now it is also a sclera continuing. but here the layers of retina becomes thin and toward the uh, optic nerve and to the central nervous system, and it looks like an image in our eye and in mind. So eye is not as simple as you think, but I tried my best to make it as simple to you. So please if you liked my lecture, please like my channel on YouTube named by the EasyMed, and please subscribe my channel as you can. Thanks a lot. Thank you.